2.5 inch springs on 40s. And the 40s are unfortunately a Maxxis Razor AT. And the reason I say that is because they were around $2,300. And there's a Pro Comp, X Comp all-terrain tire that is much less expensive, but it's completely out of stock, and it's been out of stock for several months. So yeah, this is of course a JKU 4-door. I've got the vented hood still on here, still not painted, and it is fully functional. Then the rear, which seems to be a bit of the party favor for most people, is also almost fully comp cut. There's going to be a little bit more cutting that I've got to do, a little bit more welding. This is just paint. So the next question is where is the fuel door or the fuel intake? The tail lights here and here, and then the reverse lights will be here. So the fuel intake has been relocated right here, and I do believe that I would want to be mindful of going in deep water, because although that they say the gas caps are fully sealed, I certainly don't want to be the one that tests that theory out. I will say that rain has not been a big factor. I've got about probably another 1.5 years before the Jeep's fully finished, and that's going to be painted white. Fenders are not going back on. The fenders were cut on purpose, so if I did want to put fender flares back on, I wouldn't be able to, or they'd have to be glued on, I suppose. Yep, that's Rough Country inner fenders. And the next party trick is that even though it's on 40-inch tires, because it only has a 2.5-inch Terraflex springs installed, I can still fit inside the garage. In fact, I could probably go to 42s on these 2.5-inch springs, and I would still fit. I measured that I've got 3 inches of space between the tallest part of the roof and where the garage door entrance starts. Currently, you can tell that I've got the chalk on the tires. I weirdly have 20 psi inside the front tires, and I've got 18 in the rear. And I just dropped it from 24 psi in the front to 20 in the rear is what I had, and it was still crowning. So I just dropped some more air pressure, and we're going to see where it sits now. It is a Dana 44 in the rear, unfortunately. It's still a Dana 44. It's a completely stock Dana 44 in the rear. We've been waiting to break it, and we have not been able to break it. Now, that being said, still easy. I pick easy lines when I'm going off-road. I don't go over massive rocks. If I'm having a hard time off-road, then I won't let my pride get in the way. So I just go around it, or I back up and go home, essentially. This is also a Dana 30 in the front. Now, this has had some aftermarket stuff done to it. Let's see if this will adjust. It's got Rough Country ball joints in there. And then it's got sea gussets that have been welded in. There we go, you can see that a little bit better. It does have the stock Dana 30 axle shafts, and the reason for that is because I would rather have those break than my ring and pinion. The ring and pinion is, I would show it to you, but obviously I don't want to have fluid all over the place. The ring and pinion is 456. So I've got 456 in the front, 456 in the rear, and yes, with 40-inch tires, it's been amazing. I will cruise in the 5th gear, which is the highest gear, unfortunately. I'd like to have an 8-speed in here. Maybe that'll be later down the line. But the 5-speed has been fine. I cruise at around 2,200 RPMs with 456 gears and the 40-inch tires and the 20-inch wheels. And that's been really, really amazing. I can also thank JScan for having me, or giving me the ability to make the computer understand that I've got 40-inch tires, which really only measure out to around 39 inches. And I've got the 456 gears, and I was able to reset my learned adaptive shift points, and this thing shifts incredibly now. When I had the 37s and the 22-inch wheels, even after doing all the JScan parameter changes and even after relearning the shift adaptives, it still would hang up in 3rd gear and it still just be kind of wonky, and I'd always have to lift off the accelerator in order for it to shift correctly. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Oh yeah, back to the front. The tie rod, I had Wide Open Designs cut me an aluminum tie rod, and then I put in the Barnes GM 1-ton tie rod ends on there myself. And the drag link, of course, is also done by Wide Open Designs. I had them, just like the tie rod, I had them cut a piece of aluminum bar to my specs. I think it's a 1.75 inch aluminum bar, not a 1.5. I know Barnes makes a kit. Barnes has a 1.5 or 1.5 inch kit, I think. I'd have to look. But I went a little bit bigger. And the track bar is Synergy. Poking back there, Synergy track bar, and they're perpendicular with the ground, which is amazing. There's absolutely no shimmy on the highway. I don't get any type of death wobble. I did on my 37s. I had a slight sort of death wobble that would happen around 55 miles per hour. Now those 37s that you probably see in my previous video, those were the Toyo MTs. Moving over here to the Maxxis ATs has been really great. Moving from an MT to an AT. People don't think that it's an AT. People, when they see it, they think it's an MT, but it certainly drives like an AT. I haven't put it in mud, so I'm not really holding my breath that it would do well in mud. And I mean, that's okay by me. The other thing that you probably notice is that we've got the drilled and slotted rotors on there. Of course, that's aftermarket. I tried to paint the calipers red. That clearly didn't turn out very well. But these drilled and slotted rotors are a little bit bigger than what came from the factory, which has been fine. It's been great. It's the same in the rear. It's been really, really good as far as trying to stop the 40-inch tires. Now, mind you, I don't drive like an asshole as far as speeding, and I give people in front of me some space in case I do have to do an emergency stop. Back to the Dana 30, I know that we've done more. I think I've got 456s. There's no truss, and there's no inner shafts, but everything else has been beefed up. There is... I forgot the name of what it, I forgot the name of the sleeves. There we go. So the sleeves came from Barnes. So this is a sleeved Dana 30, and all of my arm, no, not arms. Yeah, my lower control arms and my upper control arms, those are all long arms from Rough Country. They do have rubber inserts, and I prefer that because I do daily drive this thing. So they're quiet, they don't make a lot of noise, but all of the bracketry, the upper and lower brackets on the Dana 30, they're all much thicker than they are from the factory. And I think that also helps with not getting death wobble. You'll probably notice that on the track bar, there's some pink paint and there's also some rust. There's some rust spots, or I should say surface rust. It's not, there we go, now you can see it. So you see that rust spot and the paint spot. Turns out that, let me do a wide camera angle. It turns out that it was hitting, because I'm so low with just a 2.5 inch springs, which really comes out to about 2 inches. For whatever reason, they kind of sagged. And I verified that I have JKU coils from TerraFlex, but anyway, so the lift is really 2 inches or 2.1 inches. So because I was so low, we ended up notching the frame so that it would stop making contact with the track bar. And now, sure enough, I'm able to fully flex out and all the way down to my bump stops. The bump stops are not extended. Well, I guess they are a little bit from the OEMs that came from the factory. These are those durometer, or they're those fancy. They're the fancy ones from whatever the name of that company, Metal Cloak. Thank you. So they are the Metal Cloak. They're the Metal Cloak durometers, or whatever Metal Cloak calls them. And so I'm able to fully flex out now that we've got this cut, got the frame cut. Let's see if you can see that a little bit better right there. So fully cut, I guess this is about, if I had to guess, that's probably about a 1 1/4, probably about 1 1/4 cut in towards the frame. And then up here, I didn't have to go so deep because there's nothing in the way here. So this is about 1 inch on that. I can't think of anything else that I've got done to the Dana 30. Basically, the Dana 30 has been completely beefed up, except for it has every single mod that you can think of on the Dana 30, except for axle shafts. Doesn't have axle shafts, and which I mentioned earlier. And then it doesn't have the next plans are to redo the front bumper. The front bumper was custom done, but now the next phase is going to be to take the fog lights, spread the fog lights out, and make room for a winch. I don't want the front bumper to come out any further than what it already is. I want it to just be right there. And the reason for that is because I do want my approach angles to be 0. So the front is going to get pushed out, the front axle is going to get pushed out about 3 inches, maybe 3.5, and the front axle is going to get replaced when we do that to a Dana 60 front end. But the front bumper is going to be really, really nice to have a winch up here, and we're going to cut out this section right here. We're going to cut out that section of the front grille and cut out this bar here as well to make room for the front winch. That way it'll be recessed into the front bumper and I can keep my approach angles. So it's going to look a little weird with this part of the grille cut out, but I think it'll be worth it. And the rear, we're probably going to move to a 14 bolt with a shaved 13 bolt kit. The rear bumper is also going to get redone. That way I can put the tail lights recessed into the rear bumper for a flush look. And the tailgate is going to be an actual drop-down tailgate instead of this side one. So you won't see all these black screws on there, and everything's going to be flushed down, or I should say cut, so that it can be nice and flush. So it's probably going to be, it's going to have to probably be a custom tailgate. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to work with the factory one. And then I'm going to take the same tail light that I'm currently using, and I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to ask the body shop to make it also recessed into the body for a nice and flush look. If it's possible. I don't know how they're going to deal with this curvature here that comes out. Maybe they'll bring this section out to here possibly, or worst case is I'll just have this turned 90 degrees and have them sit it inside of the body that way. And then the rear fog lights, which is technically the reverse lights, they're just double as fog lights and reverse lights. Those will get brought in to the center a little bit more. That way the rear tail lights and rear turn signal lamp can just get recessed into the rear bumper. Currently the Dana 44 has been pushed out to the rear about 1.5 inches, and we plan on going further whenever we move to 46s, but that's of course when we have the 14 bolt rear with a 13 bolt shaved kit, and the arms are going to have to be custom, of course, front and rear, since we're pushing the front out about 3 inches and we're going to be pushing the rear out about 10. And that's also going to happen whenever we move to coilover. So as I said in the beginning of this video, it's probably going to be another 1.5 years before this Jeep is done. The interior is almost done. Going to go to an aftermarket seat. The shift knobs are custom. We thought about making some more of those. I need to cut this shift knob stock so that I can have the shift knob, and this is not fully installed yet. So I would like to have the shift knob sit down a little bit lower. I just think that that's going to look a little bit better than having it way up here. And then at that point, I'll have these things screwed in, because this base I can unscrew this base and put the screws in, and then put the base back on over the screws. The shift knob that I had custom done, gosh, you can't see very well. It's perforated and red stitched, and that's to match the flat bottom steering wheel. That's also perforated on the sides with the red stitching. I don't know if I'm going to keep that. I think I might move to just black stitching, because the seats are going to be red. Well, part of the seats are going to be red. They're going to have a red on the outside and a black on the inside. You guys have probably seen these before, these air vents. They are the LED ones. So whenever you can see that a little bit better. So whenever the vehicle's on, the air vents light up red. They'll change colors, like aqua or whatever color that is. That's just a more dark blue. There we got purple. So that'll change. It's got a Joing head unit. We've got the interior and exterior. My camera will not focus on anything to save my life. The front dash cam, the rear dash cam. I wanted to hide these as much as possible. In fact, I wanted to run with just a rear view camera that I have the ability to always turn on, whether I'm reversing or not. Currently I'm not reversing. The rear camera is 640p. However, even though it's 640p, it's been upscaled by Joing, who makes this head unit, and it looks high definition. It legitimately looks 720p. They did a really good job on upscaling it. I mean, you can see the individual rocks on the rear camera. Anyway, back to the front dash cams. I wanted them to be up as high as possible because when I'm 6'2", and when I drive and I'm sit up for the most part. I don't have that gangster lean, and so this can kind of get in the way whenever I take a certain on-ramp, because my on-ramp curves to the right, and this will get in the way where I can't, legitimately see where I'm going. So I wanted to completely remove this and just run the rear camera and have my dash cameras up as high as possible. Well, that obviously didn't pan out. So this one I can't see from the driver's side. All I see is the rearview mirror. And then this one I can certainly see from the driver's seat. But yeah, back to the interior. You can see some stuff that I painted black. Painted a lot of the stuff black in here to give it a little bit of a cleaner look. Whenever we do paint the Jeep white, the doors will also go white. I don't know what I'm going to do with this just yet. I'd like to, gosh, that doesn't focus. I'd like to have this the same color as this. And I need to talk to my body shop guy about that. Currently, on my 2018 JKU, I've kind of got this ghetto rigged black electrical tape put up here. And that's just a test to see if water comes in. I have not had any water issues on this side, but I went ahead and put it on here because on the driver's side I've got it put on because I was getting a drop or two whenever there was a heavy rain. Let's see what else. We don't have the glass roof in yet, but I am going to send it off to Panoramic Jeep Worldwide, I think that's the name of the company, to have them put in a glass roof. You can tell that I've done a lot of work in here because in a separate video, this whole thing was gutted. I had this whole thing gutted out and completely removed because I installed a subwoofer in the rear trunk, and then the tail lights, of course. You can see all the wiring for the tail lights. I have a really shitty camera. So I did all that. I'm actually going to be putting what's called fairy lights in here. So this won't work anymore and that won't work anymore whenever the doors open. What will work instead is the fairy lights. So if you want to Google what fairy lights look like, I found some black ones, which looks pretty cool, that they match the roll bar. I'll make a separate video on that whenever I do get around to installing them. So that's gonna, I think, look much nicer. And you'll also see some other stuff that I painted black. Wow, this thing won't focus. There it goes. So I got this painted black, the airbag painted black. And then I'm installing this aftermarket alarm system that's gonna give me a push button start. And the way that I've installed that push button start, or the way that it's going to be installed, is I'm gonna have it here where the key goes. So the push button start will be installed right there. That's why all this plastic stuff is out. I'm gonna go back to a digital dash. If you look at any of my previous videos on my channel, you'll notice that I had a digital dash on here. Well, that digital dash had some problems. It was running Android, and they've got a new one that runs Linux. And the old one that I had on here would run a navigation system. It was basically like an Android head unit, which is what this Joying is. The Joying is an Android head unit. I should probably make a separate video on this Joying head unit, but I love the fact that I can run Android Auto on here. And I can even say things like, "Hey Google," and it launches my Google Assistant, which is great. So as I'm driving, instead of, having to reach to change the music or whatever, I can just ask Google to do it. I can also use my JScan on here. I can control my headlights through JW Speaker. And I can also control the McTuning under vehicle LEDs that are controlled through Bluetooth, I think it is. But yeah, wow, that looks really trashy because it's not optimized for. So yeah, this is back to that rear view mirror that I was telling you about that I really don't want to have in here, but it is. You can't see that front dash cam, but you are able to see the dash cam that faces inside the interior. Something else that I'm able to do with the drawing head unit is I can see my dash cam in real time, which is pretty nice. Connection. Let's go to settings, right, DDPi Mini, and I connect to that, and connect to the DDPi Mini. There we go, connected. Now let's go back. Connecting to the camera, and there we go. I can see towards the front. I don't ever use this. Mostly all I do for this is to just see, like what's happened. So I got cut off there. I mostly just check this to see, like what's happened. If, there's a scratch in the Jeep or whatever, I can check and see what's been going on with it. Now, obviously this is from yesterday because today that's not what's happening in real time. But anyway, you get the idea. The being able to access the front camera, being able to access my JScan app, and do it all from here instead of having to use my phone. I can't touch that worth a darn whenever I'm filming. So yeah, that's the latest and greatest update. This has been way too long of a video. If you guys have any questions, just hit me up.